The United Kingdom's Ministry of Defense latest intelligence update on Ukraine, October 22, 2023. Recent Russian assaults in Avdiivka have led to a 90% increase in Russian casualties recorded by the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense. Since February 2022, Russia has significantly increased its force footprint in Ukraine through recruitment incentives and partial mobilization in autumn 2022. This has enabled Russia to defend held territory and conduct costly assaults. An estimated 150,000 to 190,000 permanent Russian casualties since the conflict began, including temporarily wounded. The total casualties are estimated at 240,000 to 290,000. The figures do not include Wagner Group forces or prisoner battalions fighting in Bakhmut. Ukraine's Armed Forces General Staff update. Russia continued attacks on both military and civilian targets, violating laws of war. Russia launched missile, air, and drone strikes across Ukraine. Some were intercepted by Ukrainian air defenses. Civilian areas in Donetsk region were hit. Fighting continued along multiple axes: Volyn, Polisia, Syversky, Slobozhansky, Kupiansk, Lyman, Bakhmut, Avdiivka, Mariinka, Shakhtarsk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson. Russia unsuccessfully tried to advance in many areas but was repelled by Ukrainian forces. Air and artillery strikes targeted numerous settlements. Ukraine continues counteroffensive operations in the Melitopol direction and assault operations in the Bakhmut direction, inflicting losses on Russian forces. Ukraine's Air Force conducted strikes on Russian troop concentrations. Missile forces hit 4 Russian artillery systems. The situation remains active in eastern and southern Ukraine with continued Russian attacks, but Ukraine maintains active defense across fronts. The Institute for the Study of War Russian Offensive Campaign Assessment. Russian forces are sending more troops to the Avdiivka front, despite continued challenges with frontal assaults and a failed push on October 19 to 20th. Russian military bloggers say there were no significant changes along the Avdiivka front on October 22. Russia is likely pausing after a failed major offensive that suffered heavy losses. A Russian blogger claimed Ukraine unexpectedly counterattacked near Pisky, pushing Russian forces back. Another denied any Ukrainian advances near Pisky and Opythna. Geolocated footage indicates Russia made small gains southeast of Pervomoyska on October 21. A Russian blogger said Russia has not fully cleared the Avdiivka waste heap area, which remains a contested, gray zone. The Institute for the Study of War key takeaways today. Ukraine continued counteroffensives near Bakhmut and western Zaporizhia Oblast on October 22. Russia carried out missile and drone strikes across Ukraine on October 22. Russian nationalist pro-war voices are concerned about major population decline, using anti-migrant rhetoric in response. A prominent Russian military blogger criticized top-down censorship by the Russian military. Deceased Wagner financier Yevgeny Prigozhin's campaign against the Russian Defense Ministry has outlived Prigozhin himself. Russia conducted offensives along several fronts, advancing in some areas on October 22. Russia is escalating mobilization efforts targeting Central Asian migrants. Russia continues forcibly Russifying Ukrainian children through cultural and education programs. Ukraine Matters Update. Recent Russian attacks on Bakhmut, Artemovsk, Avdiivka. Russia is throwing a lot of resources at it, likely due to political motivations from Putin rather than military logic. This could allow Ukraine more freedom on other fronts. Recent Ukrainian landings on the southern bank of the Dnipro River. Still cautious about Ukraine's ability to establish a major presence there due to difficulties getting heavy weaponry supplies across the river. Orban visiting Putin is highly problematic for NATO. Hungary should be removed if it doesn't align with NATO positions on Russia. Russia's declining military capabilities and equipment issues. Ukraine growing stronger over time. Reporting from Ukraine Update. Ukrainians conducted a successful landing operation to create a second bridgehead at Krinky, after forcing Russian troops to focus on defending the first bridgehead. Fierce fighting occurred around the first bridgehead villages of Poima and Pishchanivka. Control over these villages is unclear, but Ukrainians have entrenched themselves on the islands near the Antonivsky Bridge. Ukrainian forces crossed the Dnipro River and overwhelmed Russian troops to gain a foothold in Krinky. They then moved south of the village to create a buffer zone for maneuvering and supplying forces. Russia struggled to advance due to Ukrainian positions in the tree lines. They relied heavily on aviation, but bad weather decreased effectiveness. Ukraine has been able to reinforce and supply its troops despite Russian air activity. Some analysts believe Ukraine is forcing Russia to commit troops to Kherson, weakening them elsewhere. A massive landing operation could still occur if Russia doesn't bolster forces. Broe update. Ukraine's Ministry of Defense reported significant Russian losses in a single day, including 980 personnel, 18 tanks, 19 armored vehicles, and 15 artillery pieces. This indicates Russia is still attacking fiercely in Avdiivka. Russia has suffered heavy aircraft losses recently, with 5 jets shot down in 10 days. Ukraine has improved its air defenses and is now able to shoot down Russian jets that get too close. The U.S. is requesting $61 billion in aid for Ukraine from Congress, including funding for humanitarian assistance and military equipment. This will likely pass after a coalition government is formed in the House. The U.S. has provided some expired Javelin missiles to Ukraine, which are still usable. This allows the U.S. to give its oldest missiles to Ukraine while newer ones are produced. Ukraine continues limited crossings of the Dnipro River to raid Russian-held villages. This is meant to drain Russian resources rather than establish a permanent presence across the river. Putin met with his military leaders after a trip to China and continues to be fed lies that everything is going to plan in Ukraine. In reality, Russia is suffering huge losses. North Korea is providing ammunition to Russia as Putin tries to build relationships with authoritarian states. Ukraine received more military aid from Croatia and Canada, including helicopters and armored vehicles.